Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Introduction. Sometimes writers write about a world that does not yet exist. We do it for 100 reasons. Because it looks good to look forward, not back. Because we need to illuminate a path we hoped for, or we fear humanity will take. Because the world of the future seems more enticing or more interesting than the world of today. Because we need to warn you, to encourage, to examine, to imagine. The reasons for writing about the day after tomorrow and all the tomorrows that follow it are as many and as varied as the people writing. This book is a book of warning. It is a reminder that sometimes we take what we value for granted. There are 3 phrases that make possible the world of writing about the world of not yet. You can call it science fiction or speculative fiction. You can call it anything you wish. And these simple phrases are, what if only, if this goes on. What if gives us a change, departure from our lives. What if aliens landed tomorrow and gave us everything we wanted but at a price? If only lets us explore the glories and dangers of tomorrow. If only dogs could talk. If only I was invisible. If this goes on, the most predictive of all 3, although it does not try to predict an actual future with all of its messy confusion. Instead, if this goes on, fiction takes an element of life today. Something clear, something obvious, and normally something troubling. And asks what would happen if that one thing became bigger, became all persuasive, and changed the way we thought and behaved. If this goes on, all communication everywhere will be through text messages or computers, or direct speech between 2 people, without a machine, and without a machine will be outlawed. It's a cautionary question, and it lets us explore cautionary worlds. People think wrongly that speculative fiction is about predicting the future, but it isn't. And if it is, it tends to do a rotten job of it. Futures are things that come with many elements and a billion variables, and the human race has a habit of listening to predictions for what the future will bring, and then doing something quite different. What speculative fiction is really good for is not for future, but the present. Taking an aspect of it that troubles or is dangerous and extending and extrapolating that aspect into something that allows the people of that time to see what they're doing from a different angle. From a different place, it is cautionary. Fahrenheit 451 is speculative fiction. It is an if this goes on story. Ray Bradbury was writing about his present, which is our past. He has warnings about the things. Some of those things are obvious. Some of them, half a century later, are harder to see. Listen, if someone tells you what a story is about, they are probably right. If they tell you that this is all the story is about, they are very definitely wrong. Any story has about a host of things. It is about the author. It is about the world the author sees and deals with and lives in. It is about the words that chosen, the way those words are deployed, and it is about the story itself. What happens in the story, not about people's polemic, it's their opinion. About the author's opinions of what a story is always valid and what are always true. The author was there after all, when the book was written. She came up with it word for word, and she knows why it's used. That word instead of another. But an author is a creation of her time. She cannot even see anything that the book is about. More than half a century has passed since 1953. In America, 1953, comparatively recent medium of radio was already severely on the wane. Its reign had lasted for about 30 years, but now its exciting new medium of television had come into ascendancy. And dramas and comedies of the radio were either ending for good or reinvesting themselves with a new look, with a new visual track on the idiot box. The new channels in America were warned of juvenile delinquents, teenagers in cars who drove dangerously and lived for the kicks. The Cold War was going on between Russia and its allies and America and its allies, in which no one dropped bombs or fired bullets. But because a dropped bomb could tip the entire world into a third world war, a nuclear war from which it would never return. The Senate was holding hearings to root out hidden communists and taking steps to stamp out comic books. Whole family gatherings were around the television in the evenings. The joke in the 1950s went that in the old days you could tell who was home by seeing if the lights were on. Now you could tell who was home by seeing if the lights were off. The televisions were small, the pictures were black and white, and you needed to turn off all the lights to get a good picture. If this goes on, thought Ray Bradbury, no one will read books anymore, and Fahrenheit 451 began. He had written a short story called The Pedestrian, about a man who is incarcerated by the police after he is stopped simply for walking. The story became part of a world he was building, and a 17-year-old Clarsey McLeland became a pedestrian in a world where no one walks. What if firemen burned down houses instead of saving them? Bradbury thought. Now he had his way to make that into a story. He had a fireman named Guy Montag who saved a book from flames instead of burning it. If only books could be saved, he thought. If you destroy all the physical books, how can you still save them? Bradbury wrote a story called The Fireman. The story demanded to be longer. The world he had created demanded more. He went to UCLA's Powell Library, and in the basement where typewriters were, you could rent by the hour by putting coins into a box on the side of the typewriter. Ray Bradbury began putting his money into the box and typed his story. When inspiration flagged, when he needed a boost, when he wanted to stretch his legs, he would walk through the library and look at books. And then his story was done. He called the Los Angeles Fire Department and asked them what temperature that paper burned. Fahrenheit 451, somebody told him, and he had his title. It didn't matter if it was true or not. The book was published and acclaimed. People loved it. They argued about it. It was a novel about censorship, they said, about mind control, about humanity, about government control of our lives, about books. It was filmed by Francis Truffaut. Although the film ending seems darker than Bradbury's, as if remembering the books is perhaps not safety net that Bradbury imagines, but is in of itself another dead end. I read Fahrenheit 451 as a boy, and I did not understand Guy Montag's, did not understand why he did what he did, but I understood the love of books that drove him. Books that were most important things in my life. The huge wall screen televisions were futuristic and implausible, as the idea that people on a television would talk to me, as if I could take part in a script. Fahrenheit was never a favorite book. It was too dark, too bleak for that. But when I read a story called Usher 2, in the Silver Locusts, the UK title for the Montreal Chronicles, I recognized the world of outlawed authors and imagination with a fierce sort of familiar joy. When I reread it as a teenager, Fahrenheit 451 became a book about independence, about free thinking. It was about treasuring books, the distent inside of the covers of the books. It was about how we as humans begun burning books and ended up by burning people. Rereading as an adult, I find myself marveling at the book once more. It is through all of those things, yes, But it is also a period piece. The four-wall television being described is the television of the 1950s. Variety shows, symphony orchestras, and the low-brow comedians and soap operas, the world of fast-driving, crazy teenagers out for kicks, and an endless Cold War that sometimes goes hot of wives who appear to have no jobs or identities save for their husbands, of bad men being chased by hounds, even mechanical hounds, is a world that feels like it has the roots firmly in the 1950s. A young reader finding this book today or the day after tomorrow is going to imagine first a past and then a future that belongs to that past. But still, the heart of the book remains untouched, and the questions Bradbury remain as valid and important. Why do we need the things in books, the poems, the essays, the stories? Authors disagree. Authors are human and fallible and foolish. So the story is lies after all. Tales of people who were never existed, the things that were never actually happened to them. Why should we read then? Why should we care? The teller and the tale are very different. We must not forget that. Written ideas are special. They are the way we transfer our stories, our thoughts from one generation to the next. If we lose them, we lose our shared history. We lose much of what makes us human, and fiction gives us empathy. It puts us inside the minds of other people, gives us the gift of seeing the world through their eyes. Fiction is a lie that tells us true things over and over. I knew Ray Bradbury for the last 30 years of his life, and he was so lucky. He was funny, gentle, and always, even at the end, when he was so old and he was blind and wheelchair-bound, even then enthusiastic. He cared completely and utterly about things. He cared about toys and childhood and films. He cared about books. He cared about stories. This is a book about caring for things. It's a love letter to books, but I think just as much as a love letter to people. A love letter to the world of Wagunacan, Illinois, in the 20th century. It is a world which Ray Bradbury had grew up in, which he immortalized as Greentown in his book of childhood called Dandelion Wine. As I said when we began, if someone tells you what a story is all about, they are probably right. But if they tell you the story is all the story is about, they are probably wrong. So any of the things I have told you about Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury's remarkable book of warning, will be incomplete. It is about these things, yes, but it is about more than that. It is about what you find between these pages. As a final note, in these days when we worry, when we argue whether ebooks are real books, I love how broad Ray Bradbury's definition of a book is in the end, when he points that we should not judge a book by their covers, and some books existed between covers, that they are perfectly people-shaped. Neil Gaiman, April of 2013.